Welcome back to our talk on the unknown facts of the churches in Revelation. Today's the big one, Laodicea, the church that said, I don't need Jesus. Here we are going to discuss one of the churches, actually the only one, that Jesus had nothing positive to say anything about. It was a lukewarm church filled with self-sufficient people that didn't depend on Jesus. The Church of Laodicea is a true testament to what is wrong with much of modern Christianity as it becomes centered on me and becomes nothing about him. Let me know in the comments if you're liking this in-depth breakdown of the last days during our Revelation study. Also, make sure you check us out again on Monday at 9 a.m. as we continue with the series. Or if this video was made a little while ago, check the description of this video to see the link to the full playlist on the last days Revelation study.
There are 4 views of the book of Revelation. 4 views. Now, I don't want to upend the apple cart entirely here because the book of Revelation is about what is to come. The book itself says this is about what is to come, because look at what happens here in Revelation 1:1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants the things that must soon take place. That means things that are going to happen in the future, which he made known by sending his angel to his servant John. Or right in verse 19 of the same chapter, write therefore the things that you have seen, those that are, and those that are to take place after this. But notice in verse 19, there's 3 categories of things that John is commanded to write. The things that you have seen, past tense, the things that are, the present tense, and the things that are yet to take place, future tense. So John is being given a revelation not just of the last, I guess, the classic definition is the last 7 years of human existence. He's actually being given a revelation of the entirety of human history from recent times in his lifetime to even our generation today. But that has not stopped the prognosticators of our age from giving us endless, copious amounts of end-time roadmaps to tell us this is what's going to happen. So I don't know if you've ever seen this stuff. This is all over the internet. You can just do a real quick search all over the internet of these things. When is Jesus coming back? And something like this. You see on the screen there, we've got the roadmap of Revelation, and it begins with the rapture happens over here at the little yellow arrow going up, and then you have Daniel 9:27, his 70th week, they call that, and so on and so forth. And then there's all kinds of things that happen. I had a bunch of others that were on this screen, but nonetheless, there are so many interpretations of when things are going to happen. But what if, and I'm going to ask this question again, what if Revelation is not just about what's going to happen? Historically, there have been 4 views of interpreting Revelation. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 views, because there are 4 views of Revelation that I think are going to help us interpret it better, because we don't have to just go after one. We can actually use multiple. The first is called the preterist view. And the preterist view believes that everything that happens in the book of Revelation is pre-70 AD. And because what happens in 70 AD, that's the fall of the temple in Jerusalem. And so that's the preterist view of Revelation. Then there's another view of Revelation, which is called the historicist view. And this view interprets the events of Revelation from the cross, or the work of Jesus, to the new heavens and the new earth. This is, the whole of Revelation, the whole book is the entire culmination, actually, what would you call it? Description of all that's happening between his first coming and the culmination of all things, the restoration of all things. So that's the historicist view, big picture view of Revelation. And then this one is called the futurist view. So here's what this means. From Revelation 4, okay, this is the last 7 years of human existence until Revelation about 19, right? And at Revelation 19, then we have the millennium. And then we have the final
culmination of all things, and I'll put a new heaven and a new earth down here, right? So Revelation 4 is from 4 onward, that is talking about the last 7 years, which many people call the tribulation. And then after the tribulation, Jesus comes back with his bride, establishes a 1,000-year reign that people call the millennium. And then after the millennium, the devil is released into the earth and he causes a bunch more havoc. And then there's a final battle, and once and for all, hell and the devil and his angels and all the people who did not receive Christ are cast into the burning lake of fire. This is fire. And so then there's the final culmination at the end in the new heavens and the new earth. So this futurist view is probably the most common view that Christians and even non-Christians perceive of the book of Revelation. But there's a fourth view. And the fourth view is the idealist view. And some people call this the symbolic view. You know, we could put symbolic as well. And so what does that mean? That means that everything in Revelation is a symbolic picture of the eternal struggle of good and evil, of God and the enemy of our souls, Satan. And so Revelation is not literally a timeline in the idealist view. It's not a roadmap. It's just giving us a picture of what we should think about when we think about the world. That there is a God, that there is a devil, that there is a battle, that there is a church, and that the church is coming out of the world and the Lord is bringing to himself those who are his.
Maybe we can glean some important things, some really great truth from the book of Revelation that will help us interpret it rightly, the way that John is asked to interpret it. Because what John is asked by the Lord is to write down what? 3 things. The things that happened in the past, the things that are happening now, and the things that will happen in the future. And so that leads us to the 2 great questions. Again, when we come to the book of Revelation, what are the 2 great questions? The 2 great questions that have intrigued centuries of Christianity are this. What is the tribulation? Okay. And the second question, when is the rapture? So let's take these 2 questions on one at a time. What is the tribulation? What is the tribulation? So when we talk about the book of Revelation, we're going to see, and you're going to see as we go through this from chapter 4 on, really chapter 5 onward. No, actually, really chapter 6 onward. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens. There's a lot of plagues. There's a lot of death. There's a lot of blood. And there's a lot of persecution of good people, of Christians, right? This is all over the lion's share of the book, the middle part of the book. From chapter 6 to about chapter 19, it's just death and despair and bad stuff, right? And so that portion of history, that portion of the book, people call the tribulation. Now, we have already seen the tribulation mentioned in the first 3 chapters. There's other passages in Revelation and in another part of the New Testament where Jesus specifically mentions the tribulation. Let's look at those passages. Revelation 7:14, we're in the middle now of the tribulation. It says this, I said to him, sir, you know, and he said to me, these are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So there's this mention of a event, the great, notice the definite article, the great tribulation. Matthew 24:21, Jesus talking about the end times. This is the Olivet Discourse for all the Bible scholars out there. And he's talking about what's going to happen at his return. And he says this in verse 21, for then there will be great tribulation, as there has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And he's talking about the end days. There's going to be such a great tribulation. It's going to be like nothing, like the Holocaust has nothing on. So the question is, and this is an important question, does the church go through the tribulation? And a lot of Christians are under the impression that they will not go through the tribulation. And the reason why is because of something that we call the rapture. So before we get to whether or not we go through the tribulation, which is a time of great testing where God comes and judges the earth for its rebellion and for its rejection of Christ, we have to talk about the rapture. So what is the rapture? What is the rapture? And I have a little question here on the screen. And why can't I find that word in Scripture? Though the word rapture is not in the New Testament, it doesn't mean that it's not a thing. So where does it come from, though? The word actually, rapture, comes from the Latin rapio, which means caught up. And it comes from the Latin translation of 1 Thessalonians 4:17. 1 Thessalonians 4:17 says, "Then we who are alive and are left will be," and in the Latin Vulgate translation, the Catholic Bible, you could call it the Catholic Bible, rapturo, raptizo, I think it is, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. So that's where we get the idea that there's going to be this rapture of the church, this caught up, this catching up of the body of Christ to be with the Lord in the air when he comes again. He comes like a thief, unexpected. He will come when we least expect him in many respects. He will come when things are really, really bad. He will come when, in Matthew 24, he talks about this. This is a very stern warning, Jesus says, that the love of most will grow cold because of how bad it will get on the world. So there's the first coming and the second coming. Here's my question. Many Christians are under the impression that Jesus comes and raptures them up into heaven, and then they hang out in heaven for 7 years as they watch the earth suffer, and then they come back again. Well, that would mean that there's not two comings. That would mean there are
three
comings, and that's just not scriptural.
Right.
So wait a second. What is up with this idea that there's such a thing as and this is the term, a secret rapture of the church that spares the church at the end times from all the horrible things that will happen on the earth? And we have to ask ourselves this very important question. Is this actually in the Bible, or have I just been taught this? So Revelation chapter 4, we turn the page. Jesus talks about 7 churches. He warns those 7 churches. He commends those 7. He commends all but 1 of those 7 churches. And then we turn the page on Revelation chapter 3 to Revelation chapter 4. And here's what happens. Verse 1, John says, "After this," that is, after Jesus addresses the 7 churches, "After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice," this is the voice from chapter 1, "which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what is to take place after this.'" Again, think about this. The church ages of Revelation 2 and 3, and now in Revelation 4, Jesus is saying to John, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this. At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven with one seated on the throne." And then verse 1 of chapter 5, "Then I saw on the right hand of him who was seated on the throne a scroll, and written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals." And that's the 7-seal judgment scroll that gets unfurled, and judgment comes upon the earth, and the tribulation begins in chapter 6. Okay. Most people who believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, a secret rapture of the church, where Jesus takes those people who are faithful to him out of the earth so that they don't have to suffer, believe that the word in verse 1 here of chapter 4, "Come up here," John going up to heaven, because he says that once I was in the Spirit, John going up to heaven, that is a picture of the church being raptured. There's only one problem. It's actually not a picture of the church being raptured. It is John being given a heavenly vision. He is being given a heavenly vision to be able, now listen to this very carefully, to be able to see the difficulties that Christians, God's people, will face on the earth from a heavenly perspective. And it is so important that you catch that, because I'll tell you what keeps you depressed in your life. I will tell you what keeps you sad as a Christian. It's called a loss of perspective. It is called you have lost a sense that you have a divine destiny, that God knows exactly where you are, that there is nothing in all creation that can separate you from his love, that though the world comes against you, your Father in heaven is for you, and that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Like, when you lose that perspective, you are going to flip out. You're going to fly off the handle. You're going to get depressed. You're going to get anxious. You're going to get worried. As soon as you get disconnected from the reality that the Jesus who saves you is the one who protects you and empowers you to face whatever might come against you, as soon as you lose that, depression is yours. Depression, sadness, a feeling of I want to quit. And you've got to be very careful about that, because God doesn't want that for you. He doesn't want you disconnected from a heavenly perspective. He doesn't want you feeling like the whole world is going to come to an end. So the question is, when is the rapture? And you've got some options. So if you were raised in the church like me, these are terms you're very familiar with. So I want to unpack for you though here on the deep end the three views. Actually, there's four. So there's three views. The pre-tribulation rapture, the basis of this view comes from 2 Thessalonians 2, 6-8. Now the reason why is because in 2 Thessalonians 2, Paul is talking about to the church in Thessalonians. He's saying, look, some of you are under the impression that Jesus has come back, and he hasn't come back. And the reason why I know he hasn't come back is because it has been revealed to me that before Jesus comes back, there's going to be a man of lawlessness. This is in verse 3 of chapter 2. We don't have it on the screen. But there's going to be a man of lawlessness. He will come, and he will exalt himself above everything that is called God, and he will rebel, and he will take over the world, and we call this man the Antichrist. And here's what it says. Let's look at this verse in verse 6. You know what is restraining him now, so that he may be revealed in his time. Now notice that word, restraining. You know what is restraining him. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. In other words, we can see it ramping up to this point where there will be some man of lawlessness, some dictator, some world leader who will lead the world completely astray. But now look at these words in bold. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is taken out of the way, or is out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth and will bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming. Okay, look at that word. Only he who now restrains him. Interesting question. Who the heck is the he? Right? Who the heck is the he? Who is he who restrains this man of lawlessness from being revealed before Jesus comes again?
I know what you're thinking. I should probably binge watch the rest of the series on Revelation. Good plan. You can view the rest of the series, The Last Days Revelation Study, by going on this link over here. And if you want to hear me preach on the weekend currently, click this right over here. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. Thanks for watching.